is Mark Barrow, who was following the Supporting Local Businesses debate. So, Mark, over to you.
Great, thank you, Carl. Quickly then, question one, did we recognise the findings of the gaps, additional aspects that we need to include? There's a general surprise, I think, at the extent of the recruitment shortages that people are facing. So it's not necessarily that skills is an issue we always talk about, but man, has the gap opened up in a lot of areas. So that additional focus was a theme that kind of ran throughout actually many things. There was a point about connectivity, and particularly it was around nighttime economy, but also rural communities and how people can access things. There was the whole thing about matching the supplier skills with the needs of the local economy. Again, that's been a longer term thing, but that kind of future economy and what do we need. And then there was a particular one there, that we hadn't pulled out already, which is how can we help businesses, reduce their carbon footprint? What advice and support is there? Because how do you count carbon emissions, for example, is a difficult one. So I think that was really quite interesting. In terms of opportunities and challenges specific, there was a bit of a theme about spaces and co-working spaces kind of emerged. And one of the things I recall in that context was in Q1 and 2 last year, Estates Gazette's the go-to property journal. Apparently Shrewsbury had the biggest increase in demand for commercial space in the UK, according to that survey. So, that kind of stuff, I think we've got some evidence behind as well. The simplification of the business support offer as it kind of evolves was probably the biggest theme, I think, to be fair. Richard and Mike, who were kind of leading our sessions. And that was about, the one front door, how we can simplify grant systems. There was a bit about putting resources online for, micro businesses to access when it's convenient. If a lot of that could be kind of video type content, that just takes you through stuff rather than reading, that kind of simplicity was key there. There was an important point that particularly came out in the last session about the power of intermediaries, that those people that are supporting businesses, accountants, lawyers, other kind of advisors, etc. And then there was an echo that was again specific Shropshire, which is that lift across all of the county and the market towns. The one thing significant difference, I think particularly, it kind of came out as a peer-to-peer type, business networks. That's the bit that's kind of been missing from a lot of the physical kind of restrictions we've all been having, and the connectivity to those networks. And there's that point, isn't there, of our kind of 16,000 odd businesses, 3/4 of them have got less than 5 people in them. So that whole ability to have that time and capacity to do that was a challenge. And someone mentioned, and it was a really quite interesting one, if you've seen Clarkson's Farm, everybody, there's a bit of a thought, which is, can we all have a cheerful Charlie? That person that just comes up and just says, right, you need to do this, this, and this, and goes away again. That kind of thing. So I think that was quite interesting. And then in terms of the SWOT, there is that thing about, what's missing, could we do anything? So that thing about spaces for businesses to grow, whether it's office spaces or others. The thing about skills and skill levels. And then there was a particular one about supporting people that are growing through the planning and development process. Because actually you can get kind of lost in that. So a bit of help kind of supporting people through that were our main themes, Carl.
Excellent. If you'd like to sit so everybody's looking at you, that'd be absolutely excellent. Yeah, it's like mastermind, isn't it? What's your specialist subject? Excellent. We will do. Thanks for that. Now the second one. This is over to Tracy Dark now, who's taking a look at the strategic locations, and there was lots certainly in the session I was sitting in here. So over to you.
So I think some of the findings and the gaps. It was about networking of businesses. So a number of businesses have started through COVID pandemic, or even existing businesses have found they've felt quite isolated, and that connection across to other businesses, talked about here today, seeing people at long last and picking up links really across sectors. So I think that's quite important, how we can do more of that. So it feels to us that we have been doing a lot of it, and I think the LEP have been doing a lot of it, but there's clearly, a gap. And then also the importance of the sense of place, about, people wanting to live here and work here, I think is important. And then also a strong theme around transport was discussed in all of the groups. You know, how can we help people to be able to get to jobs better, particularly in our rural areas? So that transport connectivity is really, really important. And that takes us on to the sort of key opportunities and challenges around that attractiveness of place and uniqueness of place. Also plays into how difficult it can be to get people to jobs and people in our rural areas to jobs. Again, we talked a lot today about, you know, the cost of that. You know, getting the job has always been the difficult bit. It feels like that almost is the easy bit now. So how can we afford to get to the place to work? It's too expensive. So therefore it sort of fails at the first hurdle. So that needs to be thought about differently. Again, about other opportunities and challenges for key workers. Again, you know, some of our big sectors like NHS struggling really to recruit people because it's too expensive to live here. So how can we all do more around providing homes for key workers? We've got policies in our local plan, and we'll see those sort of flow through as we go through the examination. So I think that's, again, quite significant. And then I think the one big thing that can make a significant difference, I think it's two big things. It's transport and digital connectivity. Again, a lot of discussion in the groups that I was in about digital connectivity. Areas in Shropshire where there's no connection. You know, businesses are just not going to go to those areas. So how can we bridge that gap, really? And I know Chris Taylor talked about, you know, the 1,400 properties. 1,400 is quite a lot if you're one of those, and your children that live in those areas, education and flowing through to that. So again, you know, it's the two things. and we also, and would be a bit of a plug as well, you know, on the £97 million Bus Back Better bid that we've just put in. I think that demonstrates, you know, that the council with its partners is really trying to push on that sort of agenda. And then I think on this sort of swap bit, really one of the key things is about supporting young people into jobs, as I've said, but also older people into jobs, you know, where people have made those different lifestyle choices and want to, you know, bored with the job they had. You know, things all feel completely different, COVID pandemic. I want to take my hobby into something that I do all the time, start my own business, you know, and how we can support people, you know, the over 50s, for example, in sort of, I suppose, recognising those ambitions and aspirations they've always had, and now they've taken that opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. That's great. 2 seats left on our panel. I'd like to just introduce now for the first time today the man who's been keeping an eye on our employment and skills debate, and that's the Principal and Chief Executive of Shrewsbury Colleges Group. Give him a round of applause, James Staniforth.
Sure it warranted a round of applause, but thank you very much all the same. That's great. So I mean, in terms of the feedback from the Employment and Skills Group, I think one of the issues that was apparent to us was we're talking about 5 years, or are we talking about sort of 25 years after Mark's comments earlier about you know, what are the skills and the jobs of the future. But in terms of the gaps that we were hearing about, it was the importance of retraining that 25 to 54 age group, reskilling and upskilling them, as well as the earlier age group and the later age group, particularly because perhaps that 25 to 54 age group would have those needs in the future, around the 47% of jobs that don't exist. Probably some more thought around young people's understanding of work, including the benefits of the county of Shropshire and remaining here and the way in which a career can develop. The viability of training in an SME ecosystem. The problems that there are around bespoke training that's required for a particular company against what's funded, what's regulated, and the type of generic training that's often available through sort of government funded providers. And we've heard already about travel and travel infrastructure to support access to education and skills, and indeed for business was something that came through for us as well. In terms of opportunities and challenges, the need to retain and attract talented young people was a theme that was picked up on. Probably in a couple of ways. There was some discussion in more than one group about the chance to develop more rapidly Shrewsbury as a university town and the way in which that would benefit the economy There's implications there around the movement of people in and out and around lifestyle. And a point that I think was made earlier as well at the start about businesses taking on board the value of sponsoring young people so that we can connect them to our county rather than allowing them to disappear. I mean, as a principal of a college, I'm acutely aware of the fact that I've just sent 800 young people off to university. 20 are still in Shropshire. A lot of discussion, I think, around the awareness of the range and breadth of need and the range and breadth of the offer that exists. And there was a question which came in from outside, which was potentially this is an issue around communications and perception rather than the reality. Are we clear enough about mapping out what it is that we do and making people aware of that? Meeting the future needs, sort of about the known unknowns, but particularly thinking about the green industries and the opportunities that there are there. And there's that question around supply and demand. I mean, are we creating supply in a demand-led system, and is that something that's going to be resolved relatively easily, or something that's going to require much more thinking? And then finally, on the opportunities and challenges around digital, the way in which perhaps initial entry-level job-specific training could be delivered, utilising what we've learnt over the last 18 months, but alongside that recognition that face-to-face education is the sort of the optimal model because of the importance of relationships. And also some discussion around the way in which there's actually a national international market now for people who may very well work for businesses in Shropshire, but equally there's people who are perhaps recognising that the benefits of city living are not quite as strong as they thought they were, and that opportunity to think about lifestyle and to return and still work digitally within Shropshire was one of the interesting considerations. So what would make a difference? I think access to funding, but also the time to facilitate training, the pressure on SMEs where everybody is working at full pelt because of the difficulty of recruiting people and having people that are sort of ready to go when they are recruited. The question about business being clear about their demands and understanding of what was available in the ecosystem, and then finally that point which I think has come through everybody's feedback, which is about infrastructure, the infrastructure around digital connectivity, but also around transport. Thank you very much.